We are brilliant at solving problems in ways that make things worse. For most of the 20th century, for example, in order to limit loss of vegetation and life, the official U.S. Forest Service policy was to immediately put out any forest fire at the first sign of smoke. Seems like the right thing to do, but there's a problem. The unwanted consequence was a buildup in fuel for future fires. Eventually, a fire not quickly discovered and extinguished turned into a raging inferno, resulting in far more damage and loss of life than if they'd not followed the official Forest Service policy. Luckily, we can use systems thinking to address this difficulty. Systems thinking is a skill we can learn and use to identify the often overlooked, high-leverage solutions we need to create meaningful, long-lasting change. Let's define leverage as the ability to create dramatic improvement using minimum effort and resources while avoiding negative consequences. It's how we see the world and how we think about it that determines how much leverage we find. Here's an example. I'm holding a system. What's the cause of this behavior? I've asked this question of thousands around the world. Most answer gravity or removing the hand. But using systems thinking, we can propose an alternate mental model or theory of the cause. Now, if your mental model is gravity causes the behavior, how much leverage do you have to change it? None. You can't influence gravity. You'd be fighting the physics. And if your mental model is removing your hand causes the behavior and you don't control the hand, you're simply a victim of external forces, of those owning the hand. Blame those who don't give you enough resources. It's their fault. But if your mental model is the structure causes the behavior, then you have influence. Because you focus on the system and not just the symptoms, you begin to see where there may be leverage for change. But what if we want to change our organizations or society? Let's say, for example, we want to slow the exponentially rising cost of healthcare. This is a very complex issue. First, let's use this box to represent all those who currently have chronic disease. These people have diabetes, hypertension, cancer, HIV, and a whole host of other chronic conditions. Here's a second box called the at-risk population. This group of people have one or more risk factors, including living in unsafe, stressful environments, having poor access to healthcare, eating less healthy foods, being less active, and being more prone to risky behaviors such as smoking, among other things. Each year, some of these people flow into here by developing chronic disease. Now, on the other side of our chronic disease box, we have an outflow of people succumbing to chronic conditions through a dying flow. That's an obvious place for us to focus attention. We want to crank this handle to the right to stem the outflow because it will prevent premature deaths from chronic diseases. Systems thinking helps us expand our boundaries, to look upstream. The safe population box up here, this box has people who have positive protective factors. Who are they? They have safer places to live and exercise, sufficient income, they have access to healthcare and affordable healthy foods, they exercise more regularly and choose healthier diets. They maintain healthier weights and they don't smoke or abuse substances. These people can become at risk. This simple map helps us see how things may really work. Looking at the chronic disease population, we can ask, what do they need? Like you'd expect, treatments to lessen pain, reduce symptoms or complications, and improve length and quality of life. And the resulting economic demand leads us, as a society, into spending more money on treatments like dialysis, costly pharmaceuticals, chemotherapies, gastric bypass surgery, and other treatments. Most of these efforts tend to extend life expectancy. They reduce this flow rate, just like you would expect. But what effect does this have on other parts of the system? Well, the outflow of dying slows significantly more, and more patients accumulate in the chronic box, even as those in the at-risk box continue to develop chronic conditions. And this leads to greater demand for resources and dollars on newer treatments, which again increases the number of people with chronic conditions, which causes us to spend even more money. Through systems thinking, you can see the physics likely responsible for rising healthcare spending. And it doesn't look like it's the fault of any one actor in the system. By focusing nearly all of our attention and resources here, we ultimately have less and less money to spend back here on boosting protective factors and supporting lifestyle changes that will reduce the rate at which people become at risk or eventually even develop chronic disease. As humans, we have a strong tendency to focus on problems that occur in the here and now. to address the pain in the moment. But this means we tend to spend our time, resources, and money here. When, if we really wanted to reduce pain and suffering in the long term, we should increase our focus here, reducing the chances of preventable cases occurring in the first place. And this is just one example of how systems thinking can help solve problems. It works everywhere, in business, in schools, in relationships, and yes, even in government. Learning to visualize the structure generating a system's behavior will help identify the leverage we need. Systems thinking can forever change the way you see the world, understand the world, and change the world. We all can and should learn it.